Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Sophia. I'm the editor-in-chief and market analyst of Seafood Tip. So it's a website on the market intelligence focusing on the shrimp industry and also other species such as pangasius as well. So we are also part of Kontali. It's also like a global website, also systemizing the world of aquaculture. So basically, it also offers market intelligence and data analysis on the seafood industry in general. Okay, so let's go to the next slide for the outline. So today I'm going to present the major markets of shrimp in the Philippines, also on the other markets, the global markets such as the European market, focusing on Northern and Southern Europe, the outlook on the EU market, as well as the US and the Chinese market. So I think later I will also give an idea which markets here are the most important for the Philippines. So ayun, so yun, sana may matutunan din tayo, and we've learned a lot from the previous presenters. So later, I will also give tips on how to also enter these markets, such as trends and market trends in these markets. So let's move on. So if you see here, in the these are the major Philippine shrimp markets. So these are Japan, the US, Taiwan, Korea, and then the Europe. So among these markets, Japan is the largest or has the most potential for the Philippines, probably also because of the logistics. So it's also close to us, and we supply a lot of frozen and value-added products also to Japan, as well as to the US. So in the US market, makikita din natin na it's also increasing in 2019, and there is also strong potential in Taiwan, Korea, and also slowly in Europe. We are also able to penetrate these markets as well.
Miss Sophia?
Yes?
Can you, full screen po nung presentation?
Hindi ba naka full screen?
Hindi.
Okay. Okay. Just a moment. Ayan, naka full screen na?
Hindi pa po.
Wait lang. Paano ba to? Sandali lang
Excuse me, I think yun, hide presenter view.
Ano yun? Sorry?
You right-click again on the presentation.
Okay. So
and then
dito.
There's a hide presenter view at the middle.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
You click on it. Okay, then you show a slideshow.
Yan.
Parang ayaw naman niya.
Yung icon sa taas.
Present slides naman.
Present slides. Saan yun?
From begin, yeah. From current
Okay. Try natin. Diba F5 ba yun?
Yes.
Ayaw mo mag-click. Wait lang. Ayaw mo mag-click. Sandali lang ha. Let me try to share my other screen. Maybe this one. Ayan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sige. Oops. Ayan, okay. Ayan. All right, so ayan. So as I've mentioned earlier, yun nga, the strongest opportunities are in Japan, the US, Taiwan, Korea, and also in Europe. Okay, and gusto ko lang ipakita from the previous months what happened to one of the strongest markets of the Philippines, especially during the COVID period. So maybe also some of our exporters and producers can also shed light as to what happened in the previous months. But basically there was like some dip in May, also in April, pero it is slowly also increasing noong June, July, August. Pero bumaba ulit siya noong August. So I think because of the logistics concerns as well as the COVID-19 lockdown in the Philippines, as well as in other nations, it has become a challenge for the Philippines to continue exporting. And I've talked to some exporters also from the Philippines na hindi madali na send ng products also to other markets because of this. Yeah. All right. I would just like to take some spotlight on the kind of products that Philippine exports. So as mentioned earlier, nung mga previous presenters, there is really some value in the value-added products in the Philippines, but actually the major exports byproduct is actually frozen shrimp. So itong HS code 030617. As you can see, it's also the kind of products that are very much um, uh, available, for example, in Japan, in the US, Taiwan, Korea, France, and the UK. And if you can see here in the US market, there is some strong opportunity to export value-added products too. So, ayun, so as mentioned earlier by FeedMix, I think na talagang merong opportunity for value-added products to enter, especially the US market. All right. Okay, so una market na we wanted to explore is the European seafood market, which is also one of the markets, as I've mentioned earlier, that Philippines is looking into. So I am based in the Netherlands as a market analyst for Seafood Tip. So what we do is present global intelligence on the shrimp market and also other species. But before we get to know the European seafood market, kailangan muna natin malaman what is it actually. First, the average consumption is 24.3 kilograms of fish, and you have to see the European market as different markets. So, nasabi nila na kailangan we have to divide Europe into various markets. First is the Southern Europe, where there is already affinity in seafood. Actually, Southern Europe covers 62% of Europe's total imports from developing countries, also from its major producing nations. The Northwestern Europe and Nordic countries represented 34%. And also Eastern Europe, with its increase in
Ay, Miss Sophia, nakamute po yata kayo. Miss Sophia, pa-mute, pa-unmute po. Hindi kayo naririnig. Yun. And she's good.
Hello.
Hello. Ayan na po.
Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, where did I stop? Saan po yung...
Previous slides.
Okay po. So, all right. Okay, so as I've mentioned earlier, the European seafood market should be seen as a separate market. So first, there is Southern Europe, which already has a strong affinity for seafood. So those countries are France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and they're very much used into consuming parang mga fresh seafood. Also, they have really big store displays of fish, as well as other kinds of fresh fish. So they also have a big processing industry. So for example, Spain has a huge processing industry as well. And they also export to other European nations. So yeah, there. So also the Northwestern Europe, these are the countries na katulad ito yon in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, UK, and also the Nordic countries, which are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland. You have to remember that the Northwestern Europe's trends for eating are very much different from the Southern Europe's way of consuming seafood. So in Northwestern Europe, for example, they prefer food that are already convenient, they're already packed, they're already filleted, for example, in terms of fresh fish. And for sa hipon naman, for shrimp, they prefer food that are already also peeled, divined, also the value-added seafood. So these are the ones that are mostly used in retailers in Northwestern Europe. And this is also where you can also send yung mga value-added products also from the Philippines. Kasi di ba nga the opportunity is in the frozen products as well as in the value-added products. All right. Eastern Europe is a small market at the moment, pero it's also increasing because of the purchasing capacity na nag-increase then in Eastern Europe. All right. Okay. Let's look at this. Okay, so ito papakita ko lang yung trend nung nakaraang taon tsaka in this year. So as you can see here in the dip ng mga countries, very fluctuating yan because of the COVID-19 lockdowns, and parts of Europe are they had a different response, or they had different restrictions, also different rules in terms of combating COVID-19. So for for example, in Southern Europe, in Italy and France, they're very much affected, and in Northwestern Europe and Nordic regions, medyo mas relaxed yung mga kanilang mga measures in place. Yeah, and as of now, actually, still Northwestern Europe, especially also in the Netherlands, we are still undergoing yun nga yung sinasabi nilang second wave. So after easing the lockdowns before, in the previous months, we entered another parang partial parang lockdown in terms of like becoming stricter in the measures. So in that case, because of the quarantine measures in place in these countries, retail is very much stronger than the food service sector. So especially because restaurants are closed. So for example, here in the Netherlands, restaurants are closed, or they are only available for takeaway, for example, or pick-up. So ibig sabihin, there is really a reduced food service opportunity for exporters, especially also what's happening in the sourcing countries, like major sourcing countries to Europe. Yeah, it's been really a problem. Yeah. Remember also in Northwestern Europe that ASC certification is needed for retail. That is why I think in the Philippines only a few players are really able to meet the requirements. I think Fisher Farms has BAP requirement, pero hindi pa ASC certified. Pero a lot of the trends that we have been talking about earlier is the pivot or yung gearing towards sustainability and traceability. So especially in Northwestern Europe, these are things that are very important for European importers and buyers: traceability, sustainability, safe food safety, and hygiene. So these are things that you need to consider when you want to export to Europe. Okay. So Southern Europe, tingnan naman natin. In Southern Europe, makikita nyo na hindi kasi the Europe data is not really updated. It's basically mga 2-3 months behind. But you can see here that there was really a strong decrease in the imports of European countries from April to May. And slowly, tumataas din naman yan, because here you can see in June na in France, for example, it's rising, and that's because during this period, many European processors are able to, they want to be able to prepare early for the Christmas holiday. So basically, what you can see here is like a rise in the demand because of the preparations for the holidays, which are in October, November, December. Yan na nag-start na yung mga holiday preparations. And it was moved a bit earlier because of COVID-19, because they have to ensure that there are social distancing in the factories, ganyan. Pero you can see now na after this, we expect this to be up. Pero pag like traditionally up here, pero it will also go down because as the holiday preparations conclude, and also in major sourcing countries like yun nga sabi nila Latin America, also in Vietnam and Indonesia, which are our Southeast Asian neighbors who are very much into producing shrimp. Bumababa na yung kanilang production dahil lumalamig na, katulad sa Pilipinas, di ba? Bumabagyo na rin because of the typhoons as well as the cold weather na it's not optimal for shrimp farming, as mentioned also by our experts earlier. Okay, so less orders expected between October to onwards na. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of European countries are still suffering from COVID-19. So some countries are still in their second wave, and a lot are enforcing their own restrictions, and especially in the food service sector, that's really affected. So at the moment, the strongest opportunity is to really sell in retail. But remember that you can only sell to retail, especially in Northwestern Europe, if you already have a sustainability certificate or ASC, or if you are undergoing yung fishery improvement project for all your seafood for certain types of seafood products. So as I've mentioned, processing sector is working towards the end of year holidays. But imports starts to slow down as inventories fill. So, syempre, pag umorder sila, they need to sell that first. And once they ordered a bulk of products, they needed to sell those, and that takes also time. Restaurants are open in some parts of Europe, but some are in their lockdown, such as in the Netherlands. Tourism in Southern Europe is slow, especially at the moment. Now we are entering winter and autumn period. So, in the previous months, in April and May, we've seen a stronger demand when people are outside sa mga terrace nila or nagba-barbecue sila. They can basically have parang picnic, barbecue, and people can still go outside. But now with the winter and autumn period, you also have to consider that a lot of people are actually ngayon experiencing flu or cough, and that also makes them scared or paranoid for sa COVID-19. Production side is on their low harvest season. For example, in India, they already missed their one crop behind, and they are starting to do stocking again pagdating ng mid-December. Indonesia is also just harvested a few weeks ago, I think in end of October, and they have a big inventory now in Indonesia, so they are also trying to sell that ngayon. Pero as they enter the cold season period, also in Vietnam, not all farmers are able to stock kasi not all farms are as sophisticated as, for example, farms in Ecuador, for example, and hindi lahat ng farmers makakapag-stock for the new season. All right. Okay, so now after Europe, we go to China. Okay, so makikita naman natin dito na China, of course, was the first to be hit nung COVID-19 crisis, and you can see here na the volume has also basically also dropped in August and September 2020. Dito nung mga time na to, medyo meron pa silang caution or meron pang mga nagsisend sa kanila, but due to the parang may mga COVID-19 traces that are being found on shrimp shipments also coming from Ecuador, lalong nagiging aloof, or the Chinese buyers are very much hesitant to purchase new orders, especially from their main sourcing country, which is Ecuador. So you can also see here na the demand is really, really, really slow at the moment. And some ports, for example, for seafood imports in general, they have closed down in Tianjin Port, and also meron nakitang bagong COVID trace sa Lanzhou, I think, in China. So these factors also affect the demand for the Chinese from Ecuador especially. But some countries, for example, like Vietnam, we've heard na there are increasing orders from China. I think also because they are preparing for the Chinese New Year, which will be in the beginning of the year 2021. So that we see na medyo nagkakaroon ng demand. Pero in general, in totality, the overview is really that China has reduced significantly their orders from the sourcing countries. All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Tianjin port is closed due to COVID-19 contamination. There is also a large stock present in China. Some shipments actually have been sent back to Ecuador, and now they are sending it back as soon as they are cleared from the COVID-19 trace. So they have a way to monitor that. Chinese buyers have also scaled back in their purchases, some up to 80%. So imports actually remain low. Syempre, Chinese importers also suffered from economic losses. So this really also have to see for the demand in China, and distrust in shrimp and seafood in general, because of course with the COVID-19 traces being found in shrimp packaging, it's really low, the demand now. Okay. Now we go to another market that could be that is very relevant to the Philippines, which is the U.S. market. All right. So as you can see here, no May talaga, in May, dun talaga nakita yung effect ng COVID-19 crisis in the US. And after it slowed down in May, it slowly went up. And that's also because with the U.S. also battling its own COVID-19 crisis, a lot of the U.S. American consumers actually turn to retail and home cooking, and thus the demand for value-added products also increased during that period. And a lot of these buyers are also preparing for the holiday preparations. For November and December, and also for the Thanksgiving. So yun yung mga dahilan why, if you can see here, parang tumataas pa yung sa US. And these are also, of course, driven. One factor that is also driving this demand is also the prices. So they can also get para cheap, dahil nga a lot of the sourcing countries are having a hard time selling, for example, to China. Like Ecuador, for example, really has lost China, and it is suffering, and it is one of the biggest producers of shrimp in the world, apart from India. And now they're selling it at a very cheap price, and of course with US basically geographically closer also to Ecuador, and because the prices there are very attractive, so Ecuador is able to also slowly send some products to the US. And so you can see here that there is some demand for products in the US. Looking at the demand side, retail remains strong because of the home cooking, and the food service industry is also slowly recovering. We see that the demands will really also slow down because as the holiday preparations conclude. And so also with the sourcing countries not able to really provide a lot of raw material also. So you also have to consider that when looking at the markets from both ends. So US to India, for example, which is one of their main exporters. All right. Okay. Logistics are also slow in US due to travel restrictions. There's also currently a full inventory, and yung before na merong available stimulus packages, they have already ended. As I've mentioned earlier, American consumers like easy to make, convenient products. So these are value-added products, and like Europe, it is also undergoing the winter season, and thus there's reduced experience. Yes. Okay. All right. So I think we've come to one of the last slides. So I think for Filipino exporters, I hope that I've given you an overview of the markets, especially in the global scenario. Philippines is relatively a small player, and as our speakers earlier mentioned, that we're still on the recovery phase, but of course there's still a lot of potential, and this presentation, I hope, is helpful for you to understand also the market and how it's moving and it's changing basically. And as I mentioned earlier, that certification is a buyer requirement in Europe if you want to export there. Zero antibiotics. Kailangan din yung traceability. What is traceability? Traceability means that you're able to provide guarantee to your buyers that you can trace the origin of the product. So basically from farm to fork, sabi nga nila. Yun, ito yung mga ibang mga requirements na kailangan. For shrimp, ASC is the most relevant since it's aquaculture. And then, for example, yung iba siguro, for example, tuna, that's MSC. Yeah, and also Europe is slowly demanding a lot of the CSR requirements. Ano ba yung CSR? That's the corporate social responsibility. So that means that that you have proof that you're in your company, that you're taking care of your people, your farmers, the people on the ground. Kasi after all, it's really about those people who are working in the shrimp farms. And yeah, it's basically a proof that you are contributing not only to the sustainability of the environment, not only to the sustainability of the environment, but you're also care for the ethical values, human rights, and yan. Yun, so what is our outlook? So retail sales in Europe will be the main source of the demand, basically, because the food service sector is still down, and even if it will recover slowly, because a lot of people, I think especially a lot of the consumers right now, are really not rushing to restaurants to buy, alam mo yun, to spend their time there, especially with the COVID-19 risks. So yeah, but if there is demand in the retail sector, that will be for the pre-packed segment. So yun yung mga value added na, divined, frozen, peeled shrimp, especially for the Europe and US market. Yeah, and lastly, organic shrimp also is becoming a thing or a trend also in Europe. So you may also consider that when you're also trying to sell to these markets. And you can see here, ito yun yung ASC certification. Ayan, ASC, and then ayan, ito ibig sabihin nun organic, biology, carnalan. Yan. These are from the Netherlands. Okay. Ayun, so as I've mentioned, I'm part of the seafood tip. I also we do market analysis as well as a weekly price update. Currently, we have 3 members from the Philippines, and we're looking to grow our membership. So we hope na through these webinars and also these market intelligence that we provide, parang you can also subscribe to Seafood Tip. And ayun, actually we recently introduced this week we introduced na isama yung Philippines for our farm gate price updates, although these will not be, of course, depending on the situation, but we have started to include it in our weekly farm gate price portal, albeit occasionally. We also do trade analysis in various markets, so all the data you've seen earlier, for example, US, China, and Europe, we do that. So we do trade analysis and also outlook for various shrimp markets. Yeah, so we also do matchmaking services. Kunwari, if you're an exporter looking for an importer in other countries, kasi our our audience or our clients are of course global. So usually yung clients namin from Latin America, Europe, US as well. Okay, so this is an example of the weekly price portal analysis that we do. So apart from the imports that we do, ito kahapon namin to sinend. So we look at how the prices develop in the shrimp market. And yesterday we just for the first time we actually included the Philippines in our Farmgate price portal. We usually do the major shrimp producers. So that's India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Ecuador. But yesterday we included Philippines, and I hope na everyone is of course safe from the typhoon, and of course na kasama rin yan sa mga tinitingnan namin kung what the situation in the local community is also affecting yung prices or yung export, kasi alam naman natin na yung mga products in the Philippines, yung mga production in the Philippines actually go to the local market. So here in our price portal analysis, it's mostly for local consumption. All right, maybe last one. This is the Farmgate price portal. So you see here a comparison of the prices for 30, 40 counts, 60 counts, and 100 counts. So we do updates weekly. And lastly, since I think a lot of you are also wondering about how the markets are, the Shrimp Tales magazine is a free magazine. We have now started shifting our magazine, our physical magazine to online content. Pero all the same, you can download these for free. So if you go to our website, that's seafoodtip.com, you can download all these magazines for free, and they're quite useful if you just want to have an idea what is the US market, for example, or the China market. And for example, if you want to know how to market your shrimp better, especially for the global industry, I think we really have some nice tips there, how also to adjust to COVID-19 disruption in shrimp industry. So so what I wanted to say is that there's information is really the key in understanding your business, especially in the shrimp industry. The shrimp industry is very much fragmented, like it's really controlled by a lot of small farms, and we wanted to consolidate that information and turn that information into something that's really useful for not only for the exporters and importers, the traders or the processors, but especially to our small farmers. Kasi siguro yung pinaka-benchmark talaga namin for in our company is really to increase the transparency in the seafood supply chain. That's why we're doing the market analysis, in order to increase the transparency in the seafood supply chain. All right, so maraming salamat po. Thank you for inviting me. This has been an honor to present for BFAR. You can contact me with this email, and I'm also available on WhatsApp and Viber. So if you have any questions in the shrimp market, or if you're interested, of course, in a membership or a trial membership, because we offer free trial